All right. Peace, everyone. All right. Peace, everyone. We are now live here for Parlay with Sensei Shui, episode 7, Going with the Flow. So, this episode today is going to be a little bit shorter and truly off the cuff. Well, every time is off the cuff, but I have no one asked really questions for this one. So, instead, I'm going to speak on the value of going with the flow. Okay, because oftentimes I see a lot of focus on work, right? And when I say focus on work, I'm not talking about the classic work life balance, but this concept that when you're working, it actually means you have to physically be doing something. Like saying if you're meditating or doing internal work or cleaning out, your own bullshit, your own internal closet, somehow that's not work. Or by working on the opposite, right? Working on the art of surrender, working on letting things come to pass and going with the waves. It's just like, say, a tree. Once something starts to blow, is the tree going to fight against it, or is it going to go ahead and bend with the current that's coming? The value of going with the flow is learning how to be fluidic. You see it in the Tao Te Ching, you see it in Hinduism, you see it in Christianity, you see it in Islam. They talk about, yes, some of these are you're following a path, but with it is to be flexible with everything that everything life throws at you, in order to be flexible with these different trials that we go through internally, to be able to bend, ebb, and flow. Because sometimes if we stay too rigid, what ends up breaking ourselves is our inability to actually bend. So I want to speak on this because I notice and I see how things are about to open up again pretty soon, at least in the United States, once it's Monday as of next week. So this is going to be, this is May of 2020. So about a week after this, for those of y'all who watch this in the future or listen to this in the future times, everything's going to be opening up again after being from a quarantine state for about a month or two. And so when this happens, a lot of people are expecting things to go straight back to quote unquote normal. But what is normality in the first place? So normality is an agreed upon concept. 51% of people, a majority agreeing on something without any type of like restriction or any type of barriers. So once everything opens up as of next week, we're going to enter a new state of normality. We're going to enter a new state of managing life. One thing I do wish that comes out of this is that humans start to realize the level of appreciation to have for each other. Because how often before were we taking for granted being able to see our friends in person and spend time with them and even just give them a hug without getting like, are you wearing a mask, man? Without any of that stuff, for real. Like a lot of things, what were we taking for granted before? Were we working too much? Only for to discover that, oh, well, we needed to change some things, become more flexible with our schedules, to become more flexible with ourselves. Or if you're anything like me, I really invested my time during this quarantine period of 2 months into myself and healing myself, healing relationships with my family members. Before all this, my relationship with my father was like terrible. It wasn't terrible. I would say it was bad. You know, most of the times when we would be talking, it would be screaming at each other. And it would turn into that. It wasn't like screaming, but it was more like elevated voices because it was this dynamic of like, hey, let me tell you about what's going on. And then, oh, let me tell you what you need to think because I'm your father and you need to see this and respect me, blah, 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 because you're not saying exactly what I tell you to do, AKA me being my own person. And then I'm just being like, hey, this is how I see it. And then it would just kind of elevate from there and escalate from there and escalate from there. It wasn't until we went on a ride, like literally just to build a shed, because we built a shed in the backyard and I've been doing gardening and stuff. When we were doing that, we got into a really nice heart to heart conversation where we talked about some things in his past that caused him to act like he is now, and some things in my past that caused me to, what I was saying, withhold my true self from them. And a way of that was, I'm not knocking any of this. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. This was my personal experience. Okay. This is my personal experience. I'm not judging religion at all. This was just my personal experience and how it affected my psyche. So for me, what happened is when I was growing up in within conservative Christianity, doing that as an adolescent, a lot of that was connected to me as being a good human being meant restraining the things I like to do, restraining me dancing, restraining me like singing, acting goofy. I felt like I had to be in a line all the time. It was restraining me from like acting like, oh yeah, I could dance, I could do whatever I want, I could truly be me. And those restraints that came to me from organized religion, I brought into the household. I brought into my personal life, keeping all of myself within and wearing this mask that I felt like everyone else wanted me to be. Again, this is my personal story on this. I'm not knocking any of this stuff. This is just the way it affected my psyche. And from that, I started to discuss with my father about, hey, like, because of where we went to church and how they treated me and how they treated you and what they told me I could do and shouldn't do, I felt like I couldn't be myself around y'all because otherwise I'd be a disappointment. I'd feel like I'd let you down. And then he was just like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, and then we started to talk about stuff, and it was the way he was treated by his peers and not respected by the people at that congregation. Likewise, the way that their children treated me and how we both weren't respected, and how in that way that brought a rift in between us. By talking about this and getting super uncomfortable and like just bearing it all and being like, hey, yo, I thought this and this and this. He's like, oh, for real? Well, I thought this, and this. Talking it out, and now coming out of this quarantine, I've healed my relationship with my father. We could actually like talk and hang out and go for walks and like regular stuff, like a functioning relationship, you know, because out of this, you see kind of two sides in a way. You see this one side that's like, oh, you know, you got all this time, it's time to hustle and start a new business and da da da. Or in this other way, I went to go, let me go more the feminine route. All right. Let me heal myself and surrender and go with the flow on all these things. And by surrendering and going with the flow, I've had opportunities open up, like financially and professionally. I've had like new opportunities open up to places to travel in the future, and like as well as new people to work with and to assist. And where all this come from? Was this for me like messaging 100 people a day on things? No. What this came from was me surrendering. This came from me taking time to heal the relationship with my father, because I knew that was an issue. All right. I knew it was an issue because the relationships we have with our parents oftentimes affect the relationship we have with others. Like the way that my relationship is with my mother is the way that my relationship is with other females, at least the way that I see it, the way that my brain processes it. At least when it comes to the relationship with men and other men, that's affected by the relationship I have with my father. And so I realized, okay, some of these things need to get healed, because I found a lot of my friends, we were just like working and hustling, not like really hanging out. I was always like, felt this issue of like, hey, if we're not like working, like, what are we doing? Because all I saw my dad do is go to work and then like talk to me about work and then ask me how much money I'm making. We never just talked about like, hey, so how was your day? How are you feeling about yourself? Never talked about that until maybe like a month ago, because we were just cycling, living Groundhog Day over and over again. And this importance of this, I found, has allowed me to balance the masculine energy within. So when I say masculine energy, I'm speaking on this logical, electric, directional focus energy, and be able to balance that with the feminine. All right. As a creative, I'm naturally more like, oh yeah, we're going to do this and all these ideas and all that. That's great. But at what point are you going to actually take these, use that masculine energy to take all this direction and then navigate a path to get to the goal? That balance of masculine and feminine energy. I found myself really scattered. So I was like, all right, I need to heal the masculine. Okay, yeah, cool. It helps to work out some more and like goal writing. But what was the hard work that I was avoiding for the longest time? It was like actually sitting down, having those difficult conversations with my father about my past, about our past together, or kind of the traumas we shared, to heal through that and get to a point of mutual understanding where it's like I feel a lot lighter, feel pretty chill about life, and sharing what's going on without judgment, from him. Before I felt like really judged, and now I understand more so where he's coming from. He was just concerned and wanted to know that I had a game plan and intentions on everything what that I'm doing, which I do, but I realized I was assuming that he would get it and not me like, okay, so it's this and this and this and part A and part B, part C, columns this, like I literally had to show him my journal and like be like, hey, this is what I've been writing. I've been doing this for the past 3-4 years, like or more. Like this is all that fits here because I use every page of my journals. And by sharing that with him, it really helped like heal myself. So I know I go in these loops a lot, but I go in loops a lot to help really dig the point in, to help show how important it is, to show how important it is to sometimes address these more uncomfortable things with ourselves. Because when I talk about going with the flow and the art of surrender, it's when life throws these curveballs at you, instead of like stepping in the way, learn to like go out the way, and wherever that hand landed, it's like, okay, well, now I'm in this new position. I have a new complete outlook on what's going on in my life. I have a new perspective on my reality. I realized that maybe this thing I've been running from my whole life is the reason why I can't achieve the goals that I want to achieve right now. Because even though this seems so unrelated, it's indeed related, because this neural network in my mind of like, oh, I can't be honest or myself around my father was actually for some reason connected to, oh, I can't be honest with myself or with future clients and believe in myself. Because if I couldn't believe in myself with my father, how could I believe myself with someone else that's an authority figure, right? It's really interesting how some of these things connect in our minds and our lives. And just by telling my story, I hope to bring clarity to yours, to bring clarity or some realization where it's like those, oh shit, like I kind of guess I need to do this. Or if you've seen yourself going through these things, realize when you come out this other side, it's like a dam. Like it's a dam and all this stuff's head back. Or you look at the Avatar, right? Like not the blue people, but the Nickelodeon commercial when he's with the guru on the top of the mountain. He's like, oh, the chakras are like the buns, and then they're clogged, but then you unclog them and everything flows, right? And so it was clogged. And the thing is, let me talk about energy blockages. All right. So when it comes to energy blockages, the biggest thing that you could say would block your energy is more so your mind telling it where not to flow. It's not as much like, oh, well, I got this in my muscle. Yes, it shows up in the muscles, but rather it's showing up in the muscles because the brain is telling the body, or the energy body is telling the brain to communicate to the body to hold tension in this space. So, like for me, I had this rash like near my heart and stuff, and I realized it was connected from me not communicating with my father. And once I started to do this, I was putting all these creams on. I was like eating well. I was doing all this, but this rash would not go away. I swear. I worked with a few energy healers, and I started doing my own work and like actually healing this. And then after that, like boom, like this rash was going away. That was there from like maybe starting 2 or 3 years ago. Once I took this huge kind of shift in my life, did move abroad overseas instead of move back home to heal. And once I did that, because I realized what's the use of going all the way over here and doing all this stuff? Because you could have everything in the world, but like if you don't have that relationship with your family or that relationship with yourself, or at least on a point where you're at a resolution point where it's like, hey, I did everything I can do and I'm here. Well, then you're going to have all of these things, but inside still feel like you're detached, still feel like, oh, I can't do these things. I've seen it firsthand from others, or you could say secondhand rather, and experienced some of it firsthand when I lived in Europe for a little bit. I was doing all these things, but at the same time, I was using it as like an escape about like to not deny, like pretending like the problem wasn't within myself. It was in the city that I lived in. Sometimes cities can affect you, I will say that. But oftentimes, like when people are trying to leave or hop city to city and they blame the city on the problem, now the problem's in here. All reality is experienced within. It's an internal experience. Like even sight, even though it looks external, it's being processed and told to you what's going on internal. So to go into like when you're shifting your realities and changing your realities through manifestations, through meditations, and through positive thinking. By doing that, one thing that's very important to realize is that it takes like time. A lot of the stuff when they're like, oh, instant instant manifestation and instant da da. Well, it's instant if you're looking at the scale of like one Earth year going around is 25,590 years, something like that. And if it takes you, like a month to actually get there, that's pretty instant. You know what I mean? So true stress manifests physically. Good books you should look into. Body Keeps the Score and The Healing Deep as well. Great research on how trauma and emotional wounds manifest physically. Exactly. So the wounds manifest physically, but the key words there is that the trauma and the emotional wounds, we see these physically. So the physical things that we see in our bodies are secondary to the primary aspect that is a trauma or an emotional wound. So where we go back, we go within to work on our emotional wounds that we have inside to heal these physical traumas that show up in our body or through DNA. Especially when it comes through DNA, wherever you're from, it's like when you think about what makes up this, what makes up the body, what makes up your body, it's your parents two, like, right, the egg and the sperm, right, and the chromosomes mixed together, aka a bunch of your DNA goes, it's half from one family, half from the other. That made you, right, and that made them, and so on, and that made them, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Some of these memories get encoded into your DNA, and then they're passed into your DNA. That's why some things you see, like especially babies, it's really interesting the way they like make faces like something, or they laugh like someone, or they do these like little tiny things. It's because these things are genetic. And even when it comes for traumas, a lot of things I've realized in my life is like, yo, I'm healing traumas for like generations back. I accept that. The thing is, I accept that. It's not like, oh, trauma. It's like, nah, okay, like that's why I'm here. I'm gonna be the one to actually make that shift by changing the one I eat, and then change the way I think and the life I live for myself, to change this path within my family, right? To be one, to be the example, not for just myself, but for all my little cousins and stuff that are looking at me, right? It's very important to like make a difference in yourself, right? Like you need to do that and make it in yourself, because even by changing your genetics, you're changing everything going on forward, whether you decide to have physical children or not, because the people who see you, you are being an example to them. By breaking these generational curses, by breaking these traumas that are stored within our DNA, will we further unlock this divinity we have within? Because a lot of this stuff, who is it blocked by? It's blocked by ourselves. It's not. We could say it's like, oh, it's them, and oh, no, no. Like, nah. You could say they made the construct that you have to interpret, that you got to get through, that you got to realize, yo, it's all you and how you process it, and then control your inputs. If you're just going to go and be like, oh, well, it's supposed to be like this, supposed to be like that, why does it have to be? Well, let me say this once. Hypothetically speaking, if you're playing like a video game, is it more fun like as you progress in the video game if you just like get to walk and be like, it's like really cool, but you go, okay, you're on level like 30. No, like you get super bored. Like for real, like think about it. But with all these barriers in the way and these other stuff, it gets excitement. You get more skills, you get more able, you like learn more, it becomes entertaining, it becomes that fulfillment cycle. In that same way, all these things are being thrown at us, and it's like, yo, whoa, boom, oh, level up, level up, level up, level up, level up. All right. And keep to do it, so that becomes its own way of ease. It becomes its own flow. It becomes its own ebb and flow of surrender. It becomes its own ebb and flow of being fluidic, because nothing is harder or softer than water, right? You need to learn how to ebb and go with the flow, because with that, you start to create your own path. Because if you really look at it, like next time it rains, or like for real, just get a thing of water and just like slowly pour it up on the ground. What's really interesting, it never just goes in a straight line unless you like chug it. Even if you chug it, there's all these other like tributaries, right? Say it's making a river, the little tributaries that go off and create their own little paths by themselves by following the path of least resistance. That doesn't mean not trying. No. What it means is like realizing what's being presented in front of you and realizing that's the universe's way of communicating to you. When you find that these things are coming almost effortlessly sometimes, that's a sign that some things are for you to continue to push in that way. But rather, if you find yourself you're going and you just hitting a wall and you hitting a wall and you hitting a wall, and it's like the universe like, nah, cuz, like, nah, like, shoot, no, no. It's trying to tell you that, nah, if this is coming your way, what you need to do is like adjust around the situation, go with the path of least resistance. Does that mean you're not trying? No, but you realize the effort is going different. Yeah, exactly. Everyone's path of least resistance is different, like the flow of water. So just like everything, you can listen. What I say is not like definite. I speak definite because I'm confident in my experience. So sometimes people are like, man, you saying it like that. I was like, yeah, because I know my experience. But this doesn't mean that, oh, you have to do it this way. No, 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 no. I'd like you to see myself as a perspective of universal consciousness, experiencing this reality, and you too seeing similarities and recognizing your own differences to form your own path. That's what this is all about. We're all in this together, right? Right? High School Musical song. But the biggest thing is when you're going with the flow and following the path of least resistance, the biggest thing about with that is like realizing everyone's different, realizing that everybody's doing something a little differently. So be kind to yourself. Like, be kind and patient with yourself. The best things in life emerge out of patience. Think about a flower, right? If you want to see the flower, can you get the flower and pluck out all the leaves and it's going to open up? Like, no, you're just going to like end up with a bunch of petals and it's going to be green and have a weird smell to it. It's not even going to smell that good. But if you just let it, you water it, you nourish it, you let the sun do its work, that's when it will then open up. Likewise, in your life, continue to nourish yourself, continue to water yourself, identify the things that are going on in your life. And in time, things will flower and open up. And the biggest thing is if you garden, you'll get this. If not, once you do garden, you'll get this. People always like to be the first to flower. But from gardening for a few years and growing some of my own spices and food, oftentimes the thing that flowers first falls off and bears no fruit at all. However, the purpose it served was to pollinate other flowers around it. So it still had a purpose, but did it generate anything else? Not really. It budded really fast and opened up only for to start to attract the life to come. But did it bear any fruit? No, because it came a little too early. All right. And so for this, like when you soak this in, I like to say, I talk really fast, but if you sit in the rain, you're going to get wet. I have these episodes going and I get in these states and I'm just like going and going and going because a lot of this is seeing how this represents and comes out to play in your life. It's how these words and this flow, that's why I like to talk about nature. That's why I like to talk about water, because these are things you could just bring your awareness to in your life and then reflect on it. That's the biggest thing I want you to take from this reflection. Like we can look on Instagram and we see these things we like, or on Pinterest or TikTok or Facebook, all these spiritual things. Yeah, it's great. But the value comes, you sit there, you may take a screenshot or you see that quote you resonate with and sit there with it for like 3 to 5 minutes and really think and let it go within, like really like not meddle within it, but like sit in it, let it stew, right? Not fester, but let it stew. Let those flavors go in with this quote, with whatever you read that resonated for you. Or if you're seeing a beautiful sunset, like actually enjoying seeing the sun in the distance, enjoying these little things. It's very important that you do this. This is what the difference is, where you could say between those people more elevated or that are more in mastery and those who are just kind of like they know a lot of stuff but aren't doing it, because the value comes from reflection. When you get those tingles and you feel it, like reflect on how you got there and how it's there to do it again instead of to try to go for another fix, but realize what was the logical process, what were the things you were hearing, what were the things you were doing, what was surrounding yourself with to get to the state where you're feeling this energy trickle up your spine. What was it that got you there to start to find your own path of enlightenment? Because when I speak on enlightenment, a lot of times enlightenment, it gets this like connotation that's, because you see in the pictures just all the time, right? But many people, right, are saying like, I feel like everyone in their own self is enlightened, right? Because to me, what enlightenment is, it's a state of mind, right? It's a state of mind where you become more aware of your surroundings when you see the ability to receive, the ability to come in for everything to come out. But just like everything in life, there are cycles. All right. Nothing is constant. The only constant is change. The only constant is cycles. Likewise, there are cycles of enlightenment. These cycles where you're super spiritual and meditating, loving, and other cycles where you might be like, hey, 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 right? Which is okay because it's through all these things we're learning this perspective. But just like everything, there's these higher phases of balance. There's these higher cycles. It's not just this one state. And realize for them to get to this state, they need to learn their own cycles. I like to say, as we elevate ourselves, it's not as much a straight path. It's more like, for those of y'all, I feel like everyone here will mostly get this, but it's like a record player, right? You put it on that part of vinyl, and then it's going around. You're making it way to the center, right? Or you're making it down the path, but it's more circular and going just like another groove in, another groove in, another groove in towards that part, because there's all these dynamics, layers, and perspectives to this way up, right? There's all these other perspectives on this journey of enlightenment to this journey back home. There's a lot of places in between. So there's going to be a lot of variance for us to learn these different perspectives. And I saw this the other day, but it's true. True spiritual growth isn't done in meditation, isn't practiced in yoga. That's where we learn the skills, right? That's where we learn the skills. But where the growth happens is when we see this roadblock coming, or we see this hole in the road, and then we decide not to step in it. If we say, hey, you know what? For the month of June, I'm not going to drink any alcohol, knowing damn well that when things open back up and people want to like hang out, they want to go in this and this, these are going to present yourself. But what is it that actually has you level up? By keeping this word to yourself, by actually saying to what you said, or it's like, you know what? I'm going to try this intermittent fasting thing and like eat between the hours of noon and 8 o'clock. Like, I'm going to do that, knowing damn well when it hits 8:20 and this normal mechanism, right? Because it's like we have to learn ourselves, learning these mechanisms. That's like, oh, when it's 8:20, or if you're anything like me, when it's like 11:30, and you get this little like, oh man, I want to get a little snack, and you go up to get it, and you realize like, wait, I'm making a conscious change in my life to take a different path, and to stick to these conscious changes, to realize these differences. This is where spiritual growth occurs. When we see these repeats in life, these repeats in life, these repeats of life. Oh, change it. Oh, new cycle. Okay, I want to change something else. Okay, so we're going to go new cycle, going in some of these same phases. But by realizing these things and becoming awake, all right, awake is something that's, you could say it's a synonym with awareness. But the interesting thing about like waking up, and when it says waking up, it's like, think about when your alarm goes off, or if you wake up or something, like actually from a slumber and sleep, you're a little drowsy and you're not as aware of your surroundings. Or sometimes if it's an alarm, you really don't, because it's really comfortable to like be in that state of unawareness, or to be in that state of discomfort, right? Sometimes. Well, I guess, oh, that's interesting. That's an evolution, right? I just said it's kind of comfortable to be in a state of discomfort. But I meant to say also to be in that state of comfort, right? It's comfortable to be there, right? There's nothing wrong. I'm not knocking it. Don't go extreme and like torture yourself, right? But rather, when we see, are we becoming comfortable so much so that it's keeping us from advancing forwards? Are we so afraid to lose the life we have here moving forward? All right, a key thing with manifestation, why I see a lot of manifestations fail, is because people forget to see their future selves without the baggage of the present or the past. It's like, oh, we want to accomplish this, accomplish that. We want to move here, do this, but we don't see ourselves with a happier relationship with our families. We don't see ourselves finally getting over so and so from 20, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. We don't see ourselves with a healthier relationship with ourselves. We don't see ourselves being able to, wake up in the morning and just like, do our meditations and feel like content in that. We often focus on getting this result of this house, this car, this job, X amount of people. Oh, I could do this. I'm going to travel here and do this. But not realizing what are these grooves in the gears to help get us there, right? We look at these big gears, but realize the big gears on within the watch that is this mechanism of time. Those little gears and those little details are what tunes it. One gear, a few things pop, the entire mechanism fails. So we're still in this same rut. We're still in this same rut. Because why? Did we lose sight of the goal? No. We might have lost sight of these little things it takes to get there. So with that, it's going to be a little shorter, high quality today. It's amazing. Talking about going with the flow. This has been episode 7. For those of y'all listening to the replay, there's going to be a meditation right after this. If this is your first time seeing Parlay with Sensei Shui, check it out on YouTube or SoundCloud for the other 6 episodes. This one's been going with the flow. It's always getting better. For y'all who are on here, again, I am so grateful for your support, like for real. However, when it comes to June, I might get a second phone and do both at the same time. But moving to doing these live streams on TikTok, mostly it's not just because of a thing, but also because the interaction and the questions I get are, I know these people need help. Everyone needs help, but what I see there is so many people on the spiritual path that are getting sold into spiritual materialism and not knowing it and not getting like these practices and applications of things to actually do in their life. Like just like, oh, shadow work, oh, get this crystal and get this, link in my bio. As much like, hey, you got to go within yourself and learn how to love yourself and write yourself down and take accountability and like realize your cycles in life and like move out of it. It's stuff like that, that I see the value that needs to go. But yeah. So again, thank you for joining me. Bless up. Peace, love, and gratitude. Have a nice day, and namaste. Please share with your friends if you vibe and connect with this. Pollinate the seed's consciousness to elevate the vibration of this planet. Yeah, that one was super good, right, huh? Gets better every time. Quote that.